Okay. Hello and good evening to the Small Economy podcast. I'm your host for today, Nawaz, and we have on the panel today.
I'm your other host, Frat.
Your other host, Eddie. It's become standard now.
I'm hanging around, Chris.
And I'm also hanging around Andrew.
Okay, so tonight we're going to be talking about the drones. On 15th of October, the website Intercept leaked a series of articles, or published a series of articles that it called the Drone Papers, which were based on a cache of slides that they obtained from a source that was once a member of the intelligence community and has worked with the JSOC's drone program, that is the Joint Special Operations Committee of the United States military. Now, the website described this series of articles as a long overdue public examination of America's assassination program, and that A word is what the U.S. government is and always trying to avoid to use, because assassinations are illegal, and what the U.S. government thinks it's doing with these drones is something legal. But we get to that, the legal debate around it in a bit. I'll start with the debate on the drones more generally. And broadly, like I said, there's three sides to the debate: the technology, the operations, and the law. Technologically, drones or unmanned aerial vehicles are very advantageous in a lot of fields, in agriculture, in rescue and search operations for civil defense organizations, as well as in geological surveys, in 3D mapping. But the problem with technology, and this is what Heidegger taught us, is that we cannot unlearn it. What we can do with technology is we can control our use of it. We can control it. So here's a number. As of 2005, 40 countries in the world had access to drone technology, which has now grown to be about 80 countries as of 2012.
80?
So a lot of countries are taking up these. Amazon is going to be starting using drones for its delivery pretty soon.
As toys.
Yeah. So that's what I said. Technologically, the drones have an advantage. Then there's the operation side of the debate. The very fact that drones have been Obama's and weapon of choice for this program that they're using for does sort of tell you that they are operationally superior as compared to other aerial platforms, and not just intelligence gathering and surveillance, but also in air support, for ground strikes, and as well as for force protection strikes, where drones are seen as much more advantageous than conventional aerial platforms because they're available around the clock, they have greater precision, and they impose very low costs. And yes, that is money that we're talking of. But cost estimates, let me complete this. Cost estimates put out by the U.S. Air Force show that the cost per flight per hour for an average military aircraft is in excess of $25,000 an hour. What is that for a Predator drone is about $3,600, and for Reaper is just $4,300. So that is one of the biggest game changers in terms of the use of drones.
Right. Like this, they can be used much more widely.
Definitely, which is why, like I said, a lot of countries are picking up on the technology, but it's just that this use of robotic weapons is another issue that we're going to turn to in terms of its legality.
So maybe you think you can categorically compare this to how the nuclear bombs changed the game?
Yeah, because international law as it exists, it comes out of historicity where conflicts have been interstate and have involved, people operating or somehow people being in control of. But then again, with drones, it's the same case. But then it's a very different case. Mm-hmm. Like the U.S. drone operators are sitting 8,000 miles away from where they're being used in Afghanistan and
like
Iraq and Syria.
Game.
Yeah, it is like a video game. And we talk about that in a bit.
Is it just the US that's using drones right now?
Yeah, as of now, it's the United States. UK has used drones as well.
I thought France was using drones.
No, Israel, US, UK, they have used drones, but what we are specifically occupied with tonight is the United States drone wars. In the papers deal with the
The drone
conflicts.
papers.
Yeah, the drone papers talk about the drone programs, specifically of the JSOC, not the CIA, because CIA runs a parallel drone program, and the Joint Special Operations Command runs another parallel drone program.
I just want to add to those that are listening and might not know, the drone papers are one of the largest leaks coming out since Edward Snowden.
Yeah.
And just as big as Edward Snowden, right? And that's
Definitely.
it's important.
Edward, the day they came out, Edward Snowden he tweeted, and that was one of his most like tweets, that somebody today has taken the step of coming out and talking about this, because it has been one of those things that the U.S. Since November 2002 was when the United States took the first stone strike. But since it was only in 2012 that the United States government first came out with what we call a blueprint of how they use it. Before that, the United States government never came out in public and spoke about its legality, its intentions about the use of the drone programs. And in this sense, yeah, definitely it is big. But then, like I said, we need to put this in perspective in the sense that this is not the CIA's drone operation. The CIA runs a parallel and a bigger drone operation in Afghanistan and parts of northwestern Pakistan.
I know that.
Yeah, this is just Yemen and Somalia. Yeah, this is just a part of it, and probably one of the reasons why this was leaked was because of an internal turf war between the two agencies, the JSOC and the CIA. Both of them, run to control the U.S. military's drone program exclusively. But as of today, like I said, they both run their own programs in different parts, in different theaters of war and outside theaters of war. But okay, coming back to our drone debate, yeah. Now, it was only the legal side that we left. We spoke of operations and we spoke of technology, and I made a case of drones being very useful in that case. But now we come back to the legal side of the debate. That is where it's more troublesome. Now, problems of law relate to the laws of war, the notion of self-defense, the imminence of threat, the necessity and the proportionality of hostilities, and the transparency of the conduct of this warfare. Now, it goes as a cliche, that truth is one of the first casualties of war, and in this drone war, it has been transparency, because that has been the leading victim of America's drone war, and which is where we come to this leak that has been made by this whistleblower to The Intercept. Jeremy Scahill, the lead author for The Intercept, argues that the public has a right to see these documents, not only to engage in an informed debate about the US wars, but also to understand the circumstances under which the US government arrogates to itself the right to sentence individuals to death without the established checks and balances of arrest, trial, and appeal. Okay, and that is really a big problem of law. Again, and this is both domestic legislation as well as international law of war that we're talking of, It is a big gray area. Some people would call it's just black, like the UN's special rapporteurs, Christopher Haynes and Philip Alston, they've both come out in publicly. Actually, they've gone in public and questioned the United States. There's this mode of self-defense that the US claims that it's acting in self-defense after the 9/11 attacks on American soil. Yeah. And they've both questioned this, if this drone warfare is a legally justified response to the 9/11 attacks. Now, since 2002, when the US first began striking terrorists with drones, the debate on the legality of drones has been hampered by the American government's consistent refusal to answer even the most basic questions on its drone program and its consistency with international law. The United States. Now, this is again, a problematic area. The US, on its part, considers itself to be in a non-international armed conflict with Al-Qaeda and its associates, and it justifies its killings under Article 51 of the UN Charter, which recognizes the inherent right of self-defense of states, which is an exception to Article 2, which prohibits the use of force. Now, despite the international, here's where it gets interesting. Despite this controversy that the drone program is generated, there has been no let up in its use. In fact, the number of drone strikes under Obama administration has roughly gone up thrice as much in all years of Bush administration combined.
Yeah.
Combined.
Yeah, that's what this whole debate about him being a great president.
Now, Obama, his administration has long claimed that drone strikes are really effective at killing terrorists, right? And who are otherwise really impossible to capture. And they are used only when there is a near certainty that innocent civilians will not be harmed. Now, in the lead article of the Intercept papers, the assassination complex, Skal argues that the White House failed to release any standards and procedures governing the use of drones, as I just mentioned, for the first decade of their use. From 2002 to until 2013, there was no standards or procedures that were actually communicated on the use of drones. And the way guidelines that came out in May 2013 provided a rationale that was really questionable and shady at best. It was a rationale that called for extrajudicial lethal assassinations outside in an area of active hostilities if a target presented, quote, continuing, imminent threat to U.S. persons, unquote. Now, what's problematic about all this is that we really don't know what process goes on into determining what constitutes a continuing threat to U.S. interests, U.S. persons, and what is an imminent threat. Because this notion of imminence really is questionable, because when we go into the Intercept's article on the kill chain,
they don't have definite criteria.
Exactly, it's interpreted in a very, what do I call it, in a very flexible, in a very broad manner.
It's designated like that on purpose.
Exactly, which is where, like I said, in the kill chain, in the article for the Intercept, when they write that, so what happens, how people are put up on these kill lists, what they call, is they have metadata from use of, your emails, telephones and all that, and they have a watch list of people that, the government is watching. And they put up brief biographies of these people onto what they call as baseball cards. And this baseball card is pushed from the local JSOC team all the way up to the President of the United States. This is, again, we're speaking in terms of Yemen and Somalia. For Afghanistan and northwestern Pakistan, the President does not authorize every target. But for Yemen and Somalia, because they're not recognized theaters of war, which is why the President has to authorize every kill. So these are this brief biographies of these people drawn on these metadata information is put up on a baseball card, and it's sent all the way to the President. And on an average, they say it takes about 58 days for the President to sign off and authorize an attack. And then the JSOC has 60 days to conduct lethal action. And that is what they interpret as a continuing threat. So, I leave it for you all to look at, what constitutes
imminent.
Yeah, it's not even continuing, because if, you take 58 days to decide we're going to take this person off, and 60 days to do that.
That doesn't sound very imminent.
Because if it was imminent, if it was imminent, then it would definitely...
60 days,
60 days is like an eternity in international politics, whatever. And then,
And do you know how many of these does Obama
authorize? All of them.
Like how many? Do you have a statistic on that?
Like for Yemen, we have that in 2012, Obama authorized 16 killings in Yemen, but there were more than 95 people killed.
16 times he authorized.
He authorized 16 kills.
16 kills.
But as a result of those 16 targets, there were more than 95 people who died. Again, in one of the slides that the Intercept make public, what we talk of Operation Haymaker, where they are hunting down a Taliban and Al-Qaeda militant in Afghanistan in the period from January 2012 to February 2013, an astonishing 90% of those killed weren't the intended targets. 90%, yes. Yeah, 35 of the people killed on those... Only 35 of the people killed were the targets, and about 219 were just collateral damage, as you'd call them. And again, all these people, what these slides also tell us, that any male military-aged male killed in a strike is termed as an enemy killed in action.
Who decided that?
That nobody decided that. I mean, this is what they're doing. This is the
Okay,
JSOC's
so that's
internal.
the
concept.
It's JSOC's internal understanding of who they want to take off.
And what's Congress's or the White House's view on that?
The Congress and the White House have not done anything against it. Let's just say. So they're just,
So
we
so
trust
the
them. We're not
point,
going to verify this.
so the point is that if only 10% are actually
the people who were
the
intended
people
to
that
be
were
dead.
targeted, and these people are anyone who is male and within an age of military, then they're also probably mostly innocent civilians as well.
Definitely, and which is the whole controversy surrounding this thing. Okay, now in 2012 I'm sorry, I was wrong about that. In 2012, it was Obama approved 20 people for assassination in Yemen and Somalia combined, but more than 200 people were killed in those countries. But now these figures are from
Tenfold.
but these figures come from the Bureau of Investigative Journalism. The Bureau of Investigative Journalism also has their own research team that works on the drone war of the United States.
And it's legal to follow this as a journalist, for journalists.
Well, it's not. It's
Freedom of
really
press.
not. But then
so they
under the
publish.
Freedom of Information Act, you do get certain access, but then this is classified. What the Intercept is leaking to us is classified information, which is when the Intercept tried to get into touch with the people to get an official version, and they said, no, we're not going to comment on classified.
Speaking of leak, do we have an idea of who actually did leak?
No, it is anonymous because it's still something.
But we
they
don't even know which government agency. I mean,
It is somebody involved with the JSOC. It is a team of the JSOC.
Well,
In a particular team, 48.
it could be CIA. Who knows?
Could be CIA. Could be JSOC.
Maybe they
but
do it differently.
in an interesting related development, on the 18th of October, four former drone operators of the U.S. Air Force came out publicly and they did a press conference, and they actually made this argument, which a lot of other people do, that with a lot of this civilian casualties in drones, what we do is we're basically turning in more people as enemies of the United States rather than helping the US achieve.
There was this
counter-
one kid who was, I think, 13 at the time when one of his parents died in Yemen from an attack from drones. He came to the United States and became and then spoke to the Congress.
Yeah.
He's a very eloquent kid too. It was great listening to him. And since then, he's been actually very active in the United States, talking about
Definitely, there have been groups of people from Afghanistan, from northwestern Pakistan, who've had their all their families taken out in one drone strike. There's people in the northwestern Pakistan. Amnesty International, where they've come out with this report as well, and there are people who are suffering from post-traumatic stress disorders. I mean, there's little kids, drawing where they're drawing their fields. They're drawing drones up there. They're so scared.
Yeah.
And they're living under this constant psychological pressure of whenever they hear this a similar voice.
I mean, I've heard of it in terms of like a phobia of the sky.
Yeah, definitely.
Because you even see drones.
you don't see them. Yeah.
You just boom, find
Yep.
a bomb, explode right in front of you, killing your grandma.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, definitely. There's this one story of the 60-year-old woman, Ganj Bibi, I think, who was picking okra in her field when there was a drone strike in their farm, and it was actually the girl that they interviewed, the Amnesty International.
Oh, is this the one with it was so bad that you couldn't tell the body parts and the
Definitely,
people and the
yeah,
goats?
they cannot, yeah, which is why identifying people, there's still, even according to Amnesty's numbers, there's a lot of people who they've not been able to identify who they are. So that's also one of these one of the fallouts of this whole thing, that you cannot even identify who the person is.
You can't even know if you killed the person that you.
Yeah,
were
exactly.
saying
Who
you're
you are
gonna
after. Again, these drone papers on one of the most what I found interesting is that the intelligence that the United States relies on, what they call it, the SIGINT or signals intelligence, is basically usage of metadata, your emails, your computer, and your telephone usage,
Which is
totally
itself.
definitely, because you cannot compare it with human intelligence. But then again, in these areas, the United States government really does not trust, let's say, the local intelligence, and you cannot put in a lot of spies to go and track down everyone. Plus, of course, there's this risk of you're putting in your assets in a place where it's risky for them. So here's I want to quote the source for the intercept. And he says it's stunning the number of instances where I've come across intelligence that was so faulty that when the source of information used to finish targets were misattributed to people. And it is not until several months or years later when you realize that this entire time you thought you were going after this target, it was his mother's phone the whole time.
Yeah, right, because
you really don't know. That is all you rely on. And anyone caught in the vicinity is guilty by association, That is the phenomenal gamble that this drone warfare puts the US, and one of the very good points that US rapporteur the UN rapporteur Philip Alston made was that the United States, as it's not possibly satisfying its obligation under international law to ensure accountability of the use of lethal force in this manner, as a result, what's happening is that there's an undermining of international rule of law, and they are actually creating a precedent in customary international law, which he thinks will probably come back to haunt the United States, because if these precedents were invoked by other states
on the US
and who have other problematic agendas of their own. So that is, a shaky ground in terms of, this legal precedent that the US is taking, from an international law perspective. It is a norm that the US is creating in its exercise of...
Which it could commit against its own citizens.
Which it has committed against its own citizens.
Yeah.
In Yemen, there was...
Al-Shawaki?
Al-Shawaki, yeah.
Anwar
he and his son.
Anwar al-Awlaki and his son.
Yeah.
Both American citizens.
Yeah.
Executed without due process.
Al-Awlaki is an
minor.
interesting story because, he used to be a pretty prominent sort of,
cleric.
Imam.
Yeah, cleric.
Cleric who was also, presented the Muslim community as, mostly peaceful and stuff like that.
Against... Osama bin Laden and Al-Qaeda.
Yeah, and then he was tortured by the United States, and then that's what they say drove him then to actually start calling for terror strikes on the United States
and
jihad on the United States, and also he was just a completely unstable individual after that too. He wasn't the same person.
Of course.
Yeah, torture. It's not easy to survive. Protect.
Yep. And with that, I think we can safely say that these reports that have come out and the press conference that followed, that was pretty interesting, that these people have actually written a letter to the president, all these 4 operatives of drones, and in their press conference, they all said, they're suffering from PTSD and all that kind of issues, and which is definitely... something that, okay, you're in military service, that is something probably happened to you, but still, they've come out and said, this drone warfare is actually breeding hatred, and it incites revenge in communities, in places, in families where this happens, and they've also come out in the open and spoken of the heavy alcohol and drug abuse that these people, that the drone operators suffer from.
Yeah.
Because it is not an easy thing,
They want to distance themselves from what they're doing.
Exactly. It is taking a...
They go into a dark room in some place like Utah and play video games all day where finally they realize, hey, I'm killing innocent people.
Some of them came out.
It is.
Democracy Now!
Yeah, that is them.
That was four people came out about 2 weeks ago.
They're releasing a documentary, I think.
Yeah. They came out right after the Paris attacks, and they said it was actually, I guess,
a week
good
after,
timing.
16, 17 or 18th of November.
They called for how we need to, even in the face of attacks like this, we need to stop what we're doing and think about it.
And how drones are totally against American interests. If they want safety,
I think one of them spoke to Guardian and said, drones are a recruitment drone for recruitment drive. they do the recruitment drive
A
for
recruitment
ISIS.
tool.
A recruitment tool, yeah. And what I found interesting is when one of them said that the first kill is horrible, and the third is numbing.
Exactly.
Then it just goes on and becomes
the first one sticks with you for
a while,
a long time.
It puts,
but by the fourth one, you're just completely numbed.
Yeah, true. So with that, I think we're open to discuss. I think we definitely can. I can put some questions to the panel over here, which is like I said, in carrying out this drone war as the US is doing it. What interests me as a student of international politics is that it is knowingly or unknowingly creating a precedent. It is changing customary international law, the laws of war as they existed in terms of a conflict against non-state actors, right? Al-Qaeda, Taliban, okay, they had a state and then America went in Afghanistan, fair enough. But with Al-Qaeda and now ISIS, they're not a recognized state. Okay, they have territory, but still, how does this changes the whole game of the way we've seen, or at least how the existing international law exists.
And that to me seems to be very convenient for the military-industrial complex, because you could always find a new enemy, right? As long as it is somehow jumbled up in this kind of name that we put to it: ISIS, Daesh, Al-Qaeda, whatever.
Boko Haram,
because it doesn't have a state, because it doesn't have territory, roughly speaking, that we can say that's a land that we can declare war on. The state of war will be in continual perpetuation.
Yeah.
And that's so convenient for business.
Because they can always pop up in some other
one of the arguments that has been put by the US administration is that they have consent from the governments of the countries. But again, even if it is consent, it's never given out in a manner that they would stand up. I mean, I have a quote from the DG of the Internet Services Intelligence in Pakistan, goes on to say that they're against international law, although Pakistan, Afghanistan, Yemen, Somalia, they've never went on an international forum in the ICC. The US is not signatory to the ICC, or at least to the ICJ, International Court of Justice, and gone on and pleaded a case of their breach of sovereignty in that sense. They've never done it, so in some way they're implicitly okay with this, because if even a hardcore realist, which I'm trying to be right now, does take in the benefits and inverted commas of these drone strikes. They have taken out certain senior members of Taliban, of Al-Qaeda, but I don't know, the cost in terms of civilian lives, is it really worth doing that? I don't know.
So are we in question stage right now?
Yeah, of course.
So I wanted to say before we get into that was an amazing lecture that you just gave to us.
Okay,
thanks.
you.
That was really top notch. Very good. We've been waiting for a while for this, and I think it's been worth the wait.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to say that on air.
Yeah.
Thank you, you all. But like I said, again, this lack of credible transparency is also one of the notions that hampers any international understanding, international investigation into something like this. None of the other countries, no other, let's say, meaningful, powerful country has gone on and questioned the US in doing this. So the US is, as I'm quoting again Philip Alston, he says they are creating a legal precedent, but nobody's as of now sure if it's going to come back and haunt the US when other states that the United States considers rogue, such as, I don't know, North Korea, Iran.
Well, Spain, for example, a judge in Spain, I think,
declared Bush a war criminal.
Exactly, declared Bush a war criminal.
Cheney and Rumsfeld.
Well, it's not even disputed whether he can actually enter Spain,
too.
but I mean, this is already something, right?
But then
important people also within the U.S. Neighborhood, so to speak,
But
are
that's
also raising their voices.
that's the role of the tension between state and municipal and regional governments and, of course, multinational corporations.
You know,
I mean, the influence of multinational corporations on the state, I think, is much stronger than it does in certain areas to the municipal and regional governmental powers.
I would like to bring in Saudi Arabia's role in all of this.
Oh, yeah.
Because, I mean, Eddie, you mentioned war industrial complex. And Saudi Arabia is one of these countries that we give a lot of military aid to, you know. And
Buy
they're
weapons
also,
as well.
and they're also the ones,
One of the
people
major-
in Saudi Arabia are funding ISIS and the people that we tend to be hitting drones with, you know, so that we give also money to the people who produce the drones and our U.S. firms. So I mean, on two fronts, we're giving money out, and we've basically created a conflict which you know, ends up cycling into payment towards the war industrial complex.
No, absolutely.
That is how this whole war business is conducted.
See, but something I don't get is that war have always been about making money. Like always from the beginning of time. It's all about making money and who can get more for themselves.
True.
So right now the US to me is the most active when it comes to war. They're all over the place. Sorry to say
Yeah,
that, but
because
they're all
no,
over the
because
place.
they see they can make the most money from
Exactly.
it, and they already have the biggest military in the world, which is bigger than the 12 other militaries combined.
So the drones for them, it's helpful for the US because they lose less men. They kill a lot more from the other sides, obviously.
They're not losing any men.
They're not losing any
They're
men.
unmanned.
So
And that is
to
the best
them,
part.
it's good.
Well, I mean that they get the cost of, you know, losing men, as in the occasional civilian casualties when terrorists come to the United States or Paris or something like that, which is something they must
But
be
that
taking
just
into.
reproduces the whole story.
Yeah, and
Yes.
which helps them even more
It's
because, you know, oh,
advantageous.
you see, we had to send drones, or we
Exactly.
were justified in sending drones. I mean, that's a good point to make to bring about.
Yeah. And another thing is that the people within the US doesn't see it the way the people who are being attacked sees it.
Of course.
Because everything is controlled. Media control, like everything is controlled. So 1,000 people were killed wherever they sent the drones, but we only say 100. Well, we only hear 100.
We only hear about
You know?
the combatants that were killed.
So to them, it's good and it's making money. They spend less, they make more, and that's.
But it's
business.
exactly why this concerns, why these intercept papers are ever more relevant to the American public, because all of this has been conducted in their name. All of these has been happening with their taxpayer money, but they were never, you know, asked about it, or any
Informed,
form of communication was.
Well, you know, one thing is, I kind of feel like these drone papers sort of went under the radar a little bit.
Oh, they did big time.
Like, I mean, not
Did you
like
hear about the drum
which
papers
is-
before?
Yeah, which is why it's important
I
to talk
know,
about
but
it.
I heard
asked
about. I heard,
The listeners, if they've heard of the drum papers before
I heard
this
about them
call.
when they came out, but you know, I felt like there was no big brouhaha.
Of course not.
Like
I mean,
there
was it on CNN or headline? New York
Yeah,
Times?
like
No,
there
not
was
at all.
after Snowden. At least, you
Right.
know, Snowden, you know, all the coverage was on Snowden,
It
right?
was a face to put.
It was the face, yeah, I guess. And so I'm wondering, but we've had so many of these leaks now. I'm wondering, like, what's the point that the United States or people in the United States are going to actually click and understand, you know, this is a part of a much bigger thing, and let's, you know, this bigger thing we can call capitalism, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, but I want to put a face to capitalism as well. I mean, I think it's important that we talk about the major multinational corporations that have such a benefit from the military-industrial complex.
Yeah.
And I mean, we've been talking a lot from the state perspective, but I think we could think of it from the big money perspective, and how the state and the state system seems to me to be, in many ways, pawns on the chessboard of big capital and its flows
Exactly.
in the world market. I mean,
Exactly, and what I think it was Andrew or maybe Chris who said that how these leaks just went unnoticed almost, right? And this also reminds me of what Marx says about the crisis in a capitalist society, that the contradictions of the society are at their most visible when there is a big financial crisis.
I mean, look what people do pay attention to.
What happens along with it is that this conflict, this constant situation of conflict and constant state of emergency all around us, all this artificial, mostly propaganda that we are not secure, we have to secure everything, not just the border. You have to save, you have to get a pension, you have to buy a home, you have to buy a car. All this the idea of security, that's what it's always been played.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Played at
brainwash.
Yeah,
and with all this, this whole situation that just covers all the important stuff that's actually going on, which is at the most fundamental of the contradiction that we are facing in our society.
The stuff that we actually pay attention to and look at is the stuff that's actually not really a threat to us.
Exactly.
And the biggest threats are, like drones. If you can kill American citizens in other countries, it's just a matter of time where you can decide, okay, we're going to use drones to kill American citizens. And
there are also different ways of doing it. The U.S. official police force is killing its black population, African population.
Yeah.
But
And
then,
it's being it's not being then there is nothing being done against it, right?
And
The
it's
state is sanctioning it.
And it's been going on for centuries.
Yeah.
And the only difference now, which me and Andrew spoke about earlier with Ta-Nehisi Coates, was that the only difference nowadays is that we have the technology and we see it.
Yeah,
But this shit has been going on
we have
for
the
a long
cameras.
time.
We have the cameras.
we have the smartphones.
After
but I mean,
television, now we have another revolution.
But look at the same dehumanizing tactics they use to justify killing people in Yemen, innocent civilians in Yemen, and the ones that are being used against, black people who are killed by police. It's you have to use dehumanizing tactics in order to justify it in the first place. These people aren't.
Exactly. That is what I think is interesting in the press conference that these four drone operators spoke of, and they spoke of that all you see on your monitors are shadows, and that's it. And that is how you have to, basically, first of all, you take out the human in the whole picture, which is why what's happening actually is the technology is distancing, the actual, like when you kill someone with a gun, you're directly involved in it in the sense that your fingers on the trigger and you're pushing the trigger instantaneously causes harm to someone.
You see
but if you're sitting 8,000 miles away
playing a video game,
just like playing a video game, and all you see are shadows.
And not only that, further, how the rest of the public learns about it is in a video, which is mediated through another medium that is out of our
there
control.
are two sides of this. I mean, there's the side that the military has always tried to go against is because I don't know the exact figure, but I think it's like only 1/4 of people in wars actually shoot at other people, like shoot their guns. The rest refuse to shoot their guns when the time comes to it. And then these people, this 1/4, most of them actually shoot to miss. And so it's very small number. And what drones have enabled us to do is, have 100% people shooting. And then as soon as they crack, you can always replace them with some other gamer. Gamers, and this, like, going into what you were saying of how it's presented to us in the media, games as well. Like, all of the most played games are all war games, right? And there are recruiting people, going to gamers and saying, we want this game so that we can, train or recruit people to go into the army and be as drones for us.
But then I think, like, I don't want to get off topic or anything, but the drones are just like a loud way of dealing with stuff. Because if you look at the people who actually control these things, not the governments, not the people who control these things. Like, for example, look at Bill Gates. We all know Bill Gates for computers, right? Bill Gates publicly said once that he feels that the world is overpopulated and we should
do something
get
about it.
rid of people within
Yeah,
the world.
he did a condom funding.
Yeah. Now, Bill Gates is also investing a lot of his money in medicine, right? Look at something that was so big like Ebola, for example, right? And we were all scared of Ebola. Everyone, even here in Germany,
Yeah.
We're scared of Ebola, right?
Because there was one person who was here that had it. Yeah.
Did we find a cure for Ebola?
No.
What happened to Ebola? We don't hear about Ebola anymore. Is it gone? What happened? You know what I'm saying? And these things are like you just have to look at it like this.
Yeah, it's just a story. It's just a hype in the
Yeah.
television or anywhere. It's not just television,
Yeah.
internet as well. And then they disappear, and then there is something else coming.
Exactly.
Right
Yeah.
after it.
We just divert your attention to
Yeah.
this, divert
That's
you.
true.
So
But that is the whole point of the whole media industry, you know.
yeah,
It's a
That
business.
is how
it is a business.
it carries on by providing attention. Like, not very long ago, we had the whole, you know, Greek exit out of the euro, and then came, you know, then when that became something, and when it took a real, you know, turn to the serious, when it took a turn to the serious, when the Greek government of Alexis Tsipras actually went on to resign and then was re-elected, it was no longer followed.
Yeah.
Where they came back with a renewed legitimacy of, you know, running their government, not according to EU dictates. It was just cut off. No,
As
it
if-
did not matter anymore. Why? Because then we had the big problem of refugees.
Yeah.
As if the
That was
problem has
going
been
in.
solved.
Yeah,
Right,
but it was not
right.
solved. Exactly.
The
It just-
attention.
yeah, so it is just the public. I mean, the masses, they have a very short attention span anyway.
But it's dictated that way. I don't
Again,
think
it is.
it's
But then again, nobody.
cause effect.
It's just
Everybody
that
has an
none of us,
interest in this
none
outcome.
of us as ordinary human beings would be interested. I mean, once I saw Greece out of the headlines, I never went back and looked up, okay, what's happening over there now? You know, it went from front page to one of the inner pages of the newspapers, and nobody really goes on unless they're really interested in reading that.
But it's how
That
people
is
are.
that is
Outside
how
all of
the
mind.
whole, you know,
I think, you know, to me, it's the cause is the media. I mean, they choose to go to this. It's a new story. They paint it in a new way. It's something new, a new product in which they could sell. And so that to me is the cause of why our attentions are changed to something else, right?
And it also indicates that the state and the media are cooperating.
Oh,
They have
absolutely.
mutual
Exactly,
interest
which
in
is-
everything that is in the
which is
TV.
what I would have said, that, you know, it does serve a better, bigger political purpose.
Is it the state or capital? Because that, to me,
That's a really big question.
well, to me, there's an interesting relationship that I would love to investigate more of. The relationship between state actors and capital.
Theoretically, it is the state that sets the framework for the capital to function. So the state,
That's the
So-
law.
that's what I'm
That's
saying,
on
that is how it
paper.
is. Yeah, that is
Okay.
theoretically, that's how it is.
The state can modify the law.
Definitely, it can modify the law, which is what I meant by, you know, it creates the framework for in which capital functions, in which capital operates. But then, as capital transcends state boundaries, which is now what we're seeing, you know, there's
Capital
Capital
companies.
is always
Yeah. It is transcending. It is again involved in the logic of power, and power by its very nature is expansive. You cannot constrain it. You cannot limit it. It's just going to reproduce and reinvent and regenerate itself. So as this is my take on it. As capital goes beyond outside state borders, it becomes impossible to control, and then we don't have a world state. So we have multinational firms, but we don't have anything even close to regulating those multinational firms in terms of global governance structures that would do that. We have the IMF, the World Bank, whatever, but then again, they're pawns of the capital.
Capital flight
Yeah,
is such a powerful leverage that multinationals have.
Used with
Well,
against countries.
TTIP and TPP,
TPP,
they're
yeah.
all actually being presented or being made by the United States because the United States feels the World Bank and IMF have sort of failed their pursuits, actually.
The WTO in this case, definitely, yeah, because the WTO is the trade arm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point, yeah, because that is what we spoke of when we were discussing the TTIP, that how since the demise of the Doha round, there's not been much happening on the trade side, so, you know, which is why we have a flurry of such trade agreements such as the TTIP. But then it is an interesting question. It is, who is dominating the discourse? Is it capital? Is it the state? Is it the media? But then media, you know, is really not a lot different from capital. All the big media houses.
Media is a form of capital.
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
It is big
involved.
capital behind it.
I mean,
You just look at CNN. Like, does CNN and any of its employees have any interest in peace,
No.
CNN,
or any other media outlet?
CNN, Fox.
besides Democracy Now.
Exactly. Think
Yeah.
about it. Like
The real
how
news
Democracy
dot com.
Now does it,
Yeah, the
and
real
how
news
CNN does
intercept.
it.
Yeah.
Imagine, I mean, Democracy Now will be reporting about all the. Just let's us picture the exactly opposite, diagonal opposite picture of the world that we have right now. That there are peace negotiations between Israel and the Palestinians, between Turks and the Kurds, and ISIS is being removed off the scene. Just picture it. What would we be seeing in CNN and what would we be seeing in Democracy Now? Like you
So
will
I mean,
see
if
in
Democracy
those
Now is
cases-
the opposite, it would be like some sort of real fringe thing, and CNN would be like showing discussions between governments and stuff like that, like actually reporting what's happening.
But it's how they would report it. I think they would report it as a catastrophe.
No, I mean not.
because
Catastrophic what's happening in the
exactly
world.
like
Yeah.
the whole world is coming to an end. This is
Yeah.
what we will see in CNN because all the people working in CNN will be scared that they are losing their jobs. Because if there isn't any,
Oh, I thought you meant if CNN were doing the opposite of what it should.
No, if the world was the opposite,
Yeah.
that's what he said. If we just supposed to world as it
But
exists
CNN
today,
stays the same. Okay.
yeah, everything else stays the same, and then we can imagine, what would
look,
we see.
you go to the CNN and you see these terror experts speaking.
Yeah.
Like what are
like
what will
this
these guys be after
like this
peace?
one guy, I forgot what his
And
name
there are
is.
so
Big
many of
question,
them.
yeah.
This is just one of those.
There's this
titles
one
that
guy,
these people
I forgot
have.
what his name is, but he's a terror expert. He's a former U.S. general who's been he runs the circuits mostly in CNN, and really just spews out the most fascist stuff about how we should be bombing people and droning and all that.
Interestingly, Pew Research Center did a research in 2012, and of most of the countries that they did this questionnaire in, Israel and US were the only two leading countries where there were more people in favor of drone attacks as compared to the rest of the world.
Yeah, it shows the role of propaganda in these two countries.
And
I think.
I wanted to ask you guys, what do you think the consequences of the drone technology is for international politics? Like, do you think it's going to change the game in a way that the definition of superpower is going to be
What's the
something new
question?
that we have to define? The
Repeat?
drone technology, because
Yeah.
it's not so difficult for countries to adapt it in a short span of time.
Yeah.
If you compare
it's
it to
cheap,
the last
it's cheap.
revolution with the nuclear wars, nuclear bombs.
What Chris and I were talking about, he asked me, like, seriously, who's going to be the person who is ruling the world? Because we know it's going to be coming at some point, that some sort of power is going to actually rule the world. And drones I see as a really big part of it. I mean, it's the one way to be sort of like international with your surveillance and with your policing of people. And policing, as we all know, is a euphemism for keeping people in line,
Control.
right? And so whoever is able to produce the drones is probably also the one who can.
But
have
that
world
still
hegemony.
that still is a far cry from the sort of drone technology that we have right now.
But we are heading there.
I'm not so sure if we were heading there. Why? Because as of today, the United States is the only country with the most advanced drone systems, and even in these intercept papers, what we see is that the JSOC is arguing for better military bases in terms of longer loiter times for their drones, because drones need a station to be put back to, and they cannot stay up for longer than, depending on what drone is it, but they have a maximum flight times.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens, which is what this report was also arguing of, that they need, if they want to carry the drone warfare in Yemen and Somalia, where they do not have any bases close by, they lose a lot of airtime in terms of getting to their destinations, to their targets. Whereas in Iraq and Afghanistan, and they have bases right in the countries, which is why it was never a problem. So it really depends on how the technology evolves itself. If it definitely has the potential to change the game, which is what I mentioned, that from 40 countries in 2005 to about 80 countries at the end of 2013, if they're recording, and it's not the sort of exclusive technology as what you mentioned about nuclear technology, but definitely.
I mean, I wouldn't put it on a par with nuclear.
But
nuclear
still,
technology,
it
because
has-
nuclear technology, I mean, like it's like a no return point. You know, when you initiate war, when you wage war with nuclear,
annihilation. It's
it's
annihilation.
mutual annihilation.
Yeah, definitely.
Guaranteed, right? But of course, I'm not putting it on a par with that. But in the sense that the countries that formed the UN Security Council after UN was established, or when UN was established, they were the five nuclear powers at the time. I think that was all of the nuclear powers at the time.
China was not.
And China entered later, or
Yeah.
China
China was the
became
fifth
China actually became a permanent member later, but then it was
was it before or after they?
No, it was after the joining of because the Nuclear Surprise Group and the NPT, the Non-Proliferation Treaty, the CTBT, the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty, they are treaties that come after the formation of the United Nations and the Security Council. China, as we know it today, became a country after the UN was established.
Yeah.
China,
Yes.
it's in 49 that China became a country led by the revolution of Mao Zedong. Yeah. So I'm not so sure, but definitely I get your point that nuclear technology, even today, it's a very elite club of countries which they don't want any other country to come
and
in.
the rate of proliferation with drone technology is much higher.
Yeah, but still, it's a question of are the drones as good or not? Which is
But they have the promise, right?
They have the promise, but then again, with nuclear technology, the second question that you'd have, okay, you have a nuclear reactor, you have stockpiled a weapon, how are you going to deliver it? Then comes the missile technology.
Mm-hmm.
So now in the world, what we see is that we have countries who have missile technology, and we have countries who have nuclear technology, and we have countries who have both missile and nuclear technology. Which are really the countries that we need
to... It's the combination of these technologies.
Exactly, which gives credibility to the threat that they possess.
Yeah.
So in the sense that they have the capability of carrying their nuclear warheads to long range distances.
Right.
Which is what changes the whole game. Again, if the US comes out with more efficient drone technology, then it definitely changes the whole game. And again, they're carrying predators and their drones. They carry missiles, Hellfire missiles. So I think they could carry a compact version of other nuclear warhead deliverable missiles as well.
As of now, I see drones primarily functioning as great policing tools.
Definitely, they're being used in surveillance
and execution.
Yeah, they're both.
I think
Police and judge.
Yeah.
I think
well, that is the whole part of it that you judge then and there.
Well, imagine you just get a speeding ticket, from a drone.
Worse than drones are.
You're driving and you're going fast on the highway. Motorcycles would always get away. They still do. You just send a drone. They take pictures from fucking 2 kilometers up.
The technology, like I said, it's promising. In terms of civil defense, when you have a calamity, there's an earthquake, there's a forest fire. It can get you information much quicker and much more cost efficiently than other comparable aerial technologies.
I'm sorry, you guys are saying something?
No, I was saying that they are worse weapons that we already have.
That are worse?
Yeah.
For sure.
I mean, for example, with the satellites, right? We have so many satellites, and we've been out there for so long. Who's to say that there isn't rockets on a satellite just ready to...
Well, I mean, technically it is illegal because the UN has said that the space will be something that cannot be militarized, but it's like if you've ever seen Iron Sky, that movie that made by the Swedish, some independent movie about Nazis coming from living on the moon.
Yeah.
and at one point, Palin says, "Yeah, we have a warship in space," and then they ask, the other world leaders who else has one, and then they all raise their hands except for Finland.
Okay, so I guess
I also have a question to you. How do the drone strikes affect the domestic politics in Pakistan?
That is a very good question. Like I said, from a Pakistani perspective, what I've read about it is that it's the local domestic politics comes out in this way that the military the Pakistani military has been double dealing on all of this, right?
Has been
Has
what?
been double dealing on all of this, in the sense that they face this Pakistani state now more than ever. It faces this threat from these people coming out as a backlash. Firstly, of stabbing them in the back, because Pakistan was one of the countries that recognized the Taliban regime back in the day when it was taken. They took a U-turn after 9/11. And they went on against these people that they at some point, supported as a part of their strategic depth doctrine. So it was but that was 12 years ago, 12 years before that.
Okay.
But what's happening is that this northwestern part of Pakistan is really something that has not been governed. It was really relying on the goodwill of those tribesmen. The Britishers made deals with them because they could not fight them because of the territory, and the Britishers did not want to lose their men for such an unproductive region because they really did not produce anything over there, and which is what the Pakistani state. So this federally administered tribal areas, as we call them, they are a sort of a semi-autonomous region within the territory of Pakistan. The tribes living over there, they see themselves as Pashtuns, so they do not recognize the British Durrand Line as a legitimate border between themselves, which has been one of the causes of fricture between Pakistan and Afghanistan right after Pakistan's independence. The Afghan government of then, even claimed that these were a part of Afghan territory because it was Pashtuns living over there, and Pashtuns constitute 40% of Afghan population. They constitute about
How much?
40%, 40%. They are the major singularly largest major ethnic group in Afghanistan.
Wow.
And they are about 18-20% of Pakistani population. Now, coming back to your question, in that sense, now this was the background of that area. It was one of those areas where the Pakistani state has still perhaps not been able to establish its complete control. And this was a sanctuary for all these people when they took refuge after running away from Afghanistan, after hiding from Afghanistan following the American invasion in October 2001. And the Pakistani state could not, let's say, take action against them.
That's why this part is targeted.
Which is why it's targeted, and it was difficult for the Pakistani state to actually go against them over there, operationally, So it was tactically something that, worked out in favor of the Pakistani military as well, while showing them as being the victim of, this illegal drone war of the US. So, which is again, there have been, in one of the congressional hearings, I think it was probably the CIA director that went on to say that we have an understanding with the government of Pakistan. They give us even intelligence,
Right.
on who to go against. Now, I would believe that because in the world of real politics, when Pakistan cannot go after these people, it makes only sense that they distance themselves from this whole issue and let the US do it. And, they can always go back at the United States and say, okay, play out the victim of, this roughshoding of the US government. But like I said, it does from that strategic point of view, it makes sense for them to be able to rely on that technology, which they did not have. But last year, Pakistan rolled out its own version of the drones, and so I don't know if we're going to be relying on American technology for much longer for that. But definitely, so in that case, it did take out certain high level Al Qaeda and Taliban, even the local Taliban that was active in Pakistan, the Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan. They're major leaders. So in that case, you really cannot. But there has been in terms of, at least in terms of Pakistani media, there has been a lot of debate or a lot of controversy on it. The government has been blamed about it. There has been a lot of anti-Americanism on this. Yeah, so
Coming from this area.
Yeah, it has been. I mean,
Coming from this area or all of Pakistan?
Most of the people affected have been in this area, but then
It's a national issue.
It is a national issue.
Okay.
It goes on, that our military is not doing anything. Where I don't know, whatever
Sure.
I don't know, the 8th or the 10th, whatever largest military that they are with nuclear weapons and all that kind of stuff.
So is the public opinion unified on this matter?
Like I said, it is that they are seen. Even the senior military officers have come out in the public and said, this is illegal, this is against international law. But there's been nothing done by the Pakistani state as such to go against them. There've never been attempts to take them down, which I presume.
Not even in the UN.
Nope. like I said, there was a diplomatic tit-tat between the US and the Pakistani government when the public momentum on this whole drone warfare took a very serious turn. One of the journalists leaked out the name of the CIA station chief because over there CIA is conducting the drone program, and then that was sent out a major diplomatic row among the two countries, and then with the hunting down of Osama bin Laden in 2011, which was again in Pakistani territory, the relations went to a further low. But then, Simon Hirsch has come out and, spoken about this, that, it was an implicit understanding of the Pakistani military in the way that this was supposed to be done. Otherwise, it is really, beyond any notion of doubt that the Pakistani military would not have taken action against two helicopters coming deep in its territory, right next to the seat of the military training academy, where Osama bin Laden was.
So do you see this
reportedly
as a
taken out.
tension point in the sense that can you imagine this as a cause for radicalization within the Pakistan?
Definitely. There have been, like I said, there have been instances where these people have been recruited by extreme elements, because it is. You cannot really relate to it in that way, because there have been people who've lost all of their families in just one go while they were away in the market, and their houses are taken off, and they're crippled for life. A lot of people who survive such attacks. And then it's a personal tragedy, and personal tragedy takes a very different form in terms of. And then Pashtuns, their whole Pakhtunwali is their whole custom according to which they live, is based on honor and revenge, and these people are not in the discourse of international law and all that. They're not. Let's say they would not be talking like I and you do, because they are brought up in a very different social code where honor and revenge are respected. So definitely, there have been.
Where I come from.
Yeah, there have been revenge recruitments that I've got to see in media.
Yeah.
I think with that we can conclude tonight's talk about the U.S. drone program and the Intercept papers, and I'd like to say that the team at the Intercept and the whistleblower who's leaked these papers, they deserve applaud for giving us insight into the actual working of the U.S. drone program. Yeah, kudos to them.
Yeah, and you also deserve an applaud for the amazing.
It was really informative.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening. I guess we'll hear each other next week. Cheers. All right, we're recording, and that means Eddie needs to start.
Can we just start?
Yeah,
So we just do drones? Anything else?
Yeah. Jones is
Or I could start. I could just start. And I'd say
Yeah,
I'm your
we-
host for
we-
today.
yeah.
We
Um,
introduced ourselves though, so you
Yeah,
can,
that's what I'm saying. I'd start with saying, we I'm your host for the day, and on the panel we have Eddie, Chris, Andrew.
Okay.
You guys introduce yourselves.
No, you don't have to if you don't want to.
Restart, Andrew.
No, I mean, he can just cut it out.
No, I cut that out.
It's more work for you.
I put it at the end, dude. The one goes at the end.
seconds.
We're sick and tired.